Hey, Disturbing listeners, Love is Blind, Season 5. Let's check it out.
I genuinely love you. I genuinely love you. I genuinely love you, baby. I really do. I love you so much.
Okay, so Aaliyah, in all of her goodness, just said, I found out and I love you. And that's, that's good. And maybe for Aaliyah, it's like, yeah, this isn't the best, but you take the good with the bad. I've been there before. I had a critical juncture, as I talk about sometimes, with my best friend, Humberto Castaneda, who is on this podcast a lot and as a co-host. And we had a crisis 12 years ago, and there's a Y in the road with every relationship where you get closer, and then you bump up against their sharp edges, and then you retract and you have to evaluate, is it worth it? And because you could be distant and never encounter those sharp edges, but there's distance. And maybe some relationships, that's all you want, like a casual friend. But if you want true friendship and a true relationship, then you're going to bump up against those things. And the question is it worth it? Because maybe it's not worth it. Maybe the edges are too sharp or too numerous, or the good side isn't good enough. But with Humberto, I concluded after months that it was worth it. And I was right, because after that, it's not like the edges didn't go away, but we've grown since then. We've talked about it, and the edges have been smoothed down a lot. And I have edges too that he was bumping up against. It's not just him. So he had to make those choices too. And maybe Aaliyah just made that choice. Now, I think Aaliyah deserves some kind of explanation from Lydia. Lydia is exhibiting, I can hear it in her voice, remorse. At least that's my interpretation. I think she legit feels bad, or a mixture of feelings, like also very happy that Aaliyah is cool with her.
And I love you. I'm so sorry. This is the shittiest thing ever.
Remember that I keep saying,
Yes.
I see myself in you.
Yeah.
I was scared because I didn't even know how you were going to react, and
Yeah.
because if I came here and,
And
told you
everybody.
guys,
Yeah.
Uche wouldn't have that chance.
Okay, so that was one of the speculations. I think what she is saying is, I was scared to tell you because I didn't want to screw things up for you and Uche, so I just didn't say anything. I mean, it wouldn't be guaranteed that it wouldn't work, right? Unless maybe for Aaliyah, she would have been like, oh, well, I don't want to, step on your situation, so I will not date Uche anymore because I don't want to get in the way. It sounds like maybe you still have a thing. Maybe you'll have a thing after the pods. So, but at the very least, I think what Lydia is saying is I didn't want to influence. I didn't want to have to poison or, what do they call it? Put a fly in the ointment, poison the well.
This is just really complicated. It's not ideal.
It's not.
And
It's a weird fucking fun out situation.
Yes. But that just speaks more on who we both are, like that we would be drawn to the same person.
Yeah.
I think that is crazy.
It is crazy. It's like,
Yeah, it's really great that she's seeing it that way. I was saying that. It's like, if anything, you could say, well, maybe we would be friends because we are drawn to the same person. So, yeah. Wow, Aaliyah is just a shining beacon of goodness. I still worry that she doesn't feel she has the right to stand up for herself, or she's not in connection with her anger or her sense of injustice. But it doesn't look that way to me. But I don't know.
I'm like, dude, you picked the same girl as me.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. But how do you feel emotionally? Because I told him I needed to talk to you about that. Emotionally,
honest to God, I'm not gonna lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think I fell for him.
Yeah.
And good on Lydia for being honest. I would have questioned if she would have said, I'm over him, everything's fine. Because it didn't look that way just a week earlier when she bumped into him in the pods. I mean, it could have been true, but because it sounds like the dating relationship wasn't that long ago. So good on Lydia for being able to admit that, and good on Aaliyah for being able to just hear that and not be threatened. So many people, I can't tell you how many times I am hoping that people do stuff like this. So many times on the reality TV shows that I watch on this channel, something like this will be hinted at or happen, and the other person will just completely flip out. And that isn't the only option. And people will say, yeah, Lydia should be over that stuff, and she should stop getting in the way. And it's like, well, things are complicated, and Uche can manage himself, even if Lydia did proposition Uche. Plus, you don't know if Lydia would do that. And if you really want to build a trusting relationship, one of honesty, which is the big theme in this triangle here, that you would just admit it. And if I were Aaliyah, I'd be like, well, this is weird that you are in love with my person, but I'm glad you told me because I'd like to know, and also it makes me even trust even more what you would say, because if you're willing to tell me that, then you'd be willing to, and the follow-up question is, can I trust you? And if Lydia says, yes, you can trust me, I won't do anything. And even if I did, I'm sure Uche wouldn't respond because he's a stand-up guy. And if I'm ever leaning in that direction, I will tell you, or something like that. And you would, as Aaliyah, you would be way more trusting because Lydia is honest. And it totally fits with Lydia's personality. She's a very honest person and probably has a really hard time lying and deceiving, or even just not revealing what's going on for her. So, yeah, there's just a lot of health happening here. Really tremendous, actually. I'm just trying to remember a time when I would see stuff like that. And especially Aaliyah, just like, again, I worry about what's going on, but it doesn't look like she feels like she has to do this, or that she feels like she can't express her displeasure. And but Aaliyah is like, Aaliyah is something else, honestly. Have we ever seen such a figure get tested so definitively and manage in a number of ways? Like, just even the fact that when she was being, but then I'm reminded of I have to incorporate that. When she told Uche about having cheated a couple years ago, if you take the full presentation of what she said, not just the beginning, but the full thing, it sounded like she has some pretty deep insecurities, because she said, I didn't break up with him because I didn't want to be alone. I also didn't want to hurt him, but I stayed with them for 3 months after. It's complicated, who knows, but that says something. And she also, when presenting to Uche the explanation as to why she cheated, she basically just justified it in the beginning in particular. So, all that's in there. And I wonder if she just hasn't really processed the infidelity much, which would be normal, particularly if you kept it secret and then you broke up and you never told him until now. You've revealed it. Now he'll find out. And when you talk to your friends, they would just be like, well, good riddance. He was a dud. You should date other people. And there wouldn't be, unless you really forced yourself. And, so we can use this as a jumping off point. Think about for yourself. There's probably something in your past that is regrettable. And there's not a huge motivation to offer that up at a dinner party. Say like, well, I did something really deplorable 5 years ago, and let me tell you about it. Because that's where we process, not at dinner parties necessarily, but, when you're in therapy, I'll hear from clients, my own clients, or even people who are in therapy who are just telling me about them and their therapist, about how the clients will say, I don't talk about that thing because I don't want to, because I'm ashamed of it or something. And no one knows to ask the question. The therapist doesn't know to say, hey, do you want to talk about that thing that you're hiding? So we can use this as a jumping up, because I think, given Aaliyah's maturity and goodness, seemingly, I think she might have fallen into a very common avoidance, even in her own mind, and thus didn't process sufficiently so that she could derive a lesson or a meaning or some kind of self-discovery about everything that happened. And 2 years later, she tells Uche about it, and her initial response was still rudimentary. It hadn't advanced down the road. It was still in that state of like, but I don't want to be in a relationship with the guy, but my needs weren't being met. That's that initial place that we're in those situations. It's about us. But given everything else, clearly she has the ability to step outside of herself and show empathy and care and morality. So I'm assuming that she just wasn't given a chance or didn't know to do that for herself, because it's normal to avoid that. So we can use this as jumping off point and think about for herself. So think about for yourself, think about what that was. Think about how you are going to process that. Should you bring it up in therapy? Should you find a friend and talk about it? Should you, and it's probably a number of conversations, should you journal about it? Should you question your own narrative about it, your own justifications for it? It's not about beating yourself up. It's about learning about yourself. Possibly also, reorienting yourself towards integrity, and also maybe making apologies for the past, potentially. But at the very least, it's a chance to resolve the story in your mind. If I were in Aaliyah's shoes, given the details we heard, what I would hope to get to in my narrative is that I have a problem that led to me avoiding. I really tried with this guy, this boyfriend of mine. I really tried to change things, and there were a number of things, including sexuality, that were not going well. And he just refused to address it, and he didn't really seem to care enough to work on a relationship, and it really hurt. And all that isn't my fault, but at some point, I was desperate, I was angry, and I just didn't stop to think. And I have that problem. I just forged ahead, and I felt this urge to get together with someone, and I did, and it felt good. But the next day I felt horrible, and I wondered what's wrong with me. But looking back, it was my tendency to avoid the truth, to avoid the situation. And the situation was such that I probably needed to break up, but I have a really hard time letting other people down. That's just not my way. People usually break up with me. I don't usually break up with other people, and I was scared. And that's not an excuse, but I should have faced that. I deserve to be able to recognize that I was afraid and that I was struggling. And, because you could almost, so if she does have an over-accommodating personality, I wouldn't be surprised if that boyfriend had a story of like, yeah, she kind of complained once or twice, barely, but I thought she was happy. I'm not saying this is what happened, but, just for the sake of learning about psychology. The boyfriend says, I heard little things here and there, but we would talk about it and she wouldn't talk about it again. So I figured it was resolved. And then one day she just tells me that she wants to break up with me. And I'm like, what? I thought we were good. And she tells me all these things that she hated about me. And I thought, and I even said to her, I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? It was pretty upsetting. And some of the things were weird that she was complaining about, but some of the things were probably accurate. And then I watched this show, or my friends watched this show, and they tell me that she cheated on me. And that is just mind-blowing, because she's saying that she was not getting her needs met. And frankly, like the sexuality thing, I would have loved to have talked about, who knows, but something along those lines. And from her perspective, she was communicating loudly, but from his perspective, and maybe he had a tendency to ignore, but if she were more assertive and more clear and firm, it might have gotten through to him, maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. But given what this very accommodating, very agreeable personality, and hearing what we know about the infidelity, I'm trying to match those things up, sort of like the grand theory of physics matching Einsteinian physics with string theory. It's like so with her. I just wonder. I'm just trying to make a story. It could be something else, but it could explain a few things, right? Because the thing that's the cognitive dissonance for me is that she's so good and she's so nice and she seems so altruistic and caring. How could she have cheated 2 years ago? Unless she did, in fact, make tremendous strides since then. But if she did, I think she would have a different story. She would have said something to Uche that back then I was like this, but I learned and I've changed so much. She didn't say anything like that. So I'm trying to, those two Aaliyahs don't match up. So I'm trying to figure out how they could.
I don't know. To this day, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I hopefully think that he just needed to learn a few lessons. Maybe prove to him that he needs to be a little more open. Here I am, choosing a person who is so similar to Lydia.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that I'm the same, we're the same thing. I don't know what to say about that. It could just be a way of seeing the world, but it could also be that lack of differentiation, and also could be affecting Aaliyah in ways that she doesn't know how it's affecting her. And I'd be curious to see how it plays out over time. If you're the producers, you're thinking, there's a lot you could do with this at the honeymoon or beyond to have this threesome really have a lot more interaction. Because, usually the couples are on their own, but I wonder if we're going to see a lot more interaction between the three. I mean, particularly because they're really good friends. But even then, they don't necessarily pay attention to that aspect, the friendships that are developed. But yeah, I'd be curious to see, because I think Lydia is still... Do people say sprung anymore? That's a 90s thing where you'd say, Lydia seems like she's still sprung. Where's that derived from? Sprung. To have springed into love. But anyway, so Lydia seems like she's still having feelings, which is fine, but it complicates things, particularly given the way that she sees the world. I think she sees the world in a very self-assured manner. I don't know if I showed this, but the way she described her relationship with Uche, she was going through a very difficult time, maybe some losses, maybe a divorce, or not a divorce, because she would have said, but a breakup or a death or something. And Uche was there for her. So that's a good sign for Uche that he was there for her and that they were very vulnerable together. And then we know from Uche that they broke up. And so, or the way that they broke up, right? I think he was the one that described it right. So maybe for Uche, he maybe wanted to break up earlier, but felt bad for Lydia because she was going through something. I don't know. It's just a possibility.
This is the universe giving me a second chance to have an amazing, great-ass woman.
I'm so scared, Lydia.
Why are you scared? Tell me.
I've been hurt. I genuinely...
And it also raises this very weird question that I'm sure doesn't actually apply. But since Lydia was there from the very beginning of day one of the pods, and for Aaliyah, she doesn't know Uche. Could Lydia have actually influenced Aaliyah to actually give Uche a chance? And, we didn't see the evidence of that, but I guess in the movie version of this, Lydia is this, what's that single white female movie, that kind of thing where it's a psychopathic person who's like, and through Aaliyah manipulates someone that is easily manipulatable to be the perfect person. And Aaliyah is this blank slate. And Lydia knows what Uche wants and manipulates Aaliyah to be that way, and is this constant, voice in her ear. And of course you would have those scenes where, look at me, and Aaliyah's like, and then the falling in love happens and the marriage happens, and then the revenge plan kicks in, and Lydia conspires to influence Aaliyah to cheat on him and to take all his money. That's the movie version. So I don't think that's what happened.
I really want you to be my friend, and I don't know how that's going to...
I'm going to be your friend.
How are we going to do this?
I don't know.
For me, it's a trust thing. Like, I would want you to be my friend, and I want that, but I don't want to ever feel like I got to look over my shoulder.
Okay, good. So this is an indication that she's not always agreeable, that she's able to assert for her own needs. That's a very good sign. She just started with the good stuff to establish a foundation, and now she's saying that, which is a great strategy.
It's up to you.
And I genuinely don't.
I'm only gonna see Uche now as
Yeah.
Aaliyah's husband. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard her name, Aaliyah. So I was mispronouncing Aaliyah's name. That must have been really annoying to hear me say Aaliyah the whole time.
Kobe.
I know. I had a dog named Kobe.
Kobe's amazing. Kobe's fun, playful.
Yeah.
He pisses himself every time he sees me. He destroys the toy, so I even bought him a toy, like it was like a bone. Which it was like, I don't know where you bought that, but that was like a good one.
Yeah.
I know everything about him because I know him.
Why does she say things like that and ruin it? I know everything about him because so is it some kind of anxious power play? Like, because, if you're Lydia, you gotta feel bad given you really wanted to be with Uche and he dumped you and you really fell in love with him, and it's gotta hurt. Even if intellectually you're like, yeah, no, I didn't want to be with him, but she has feelings still lingering, and so it's gotta hurt. And maybe if that is true, then her way of coping with it is to establish dominance over everything and to pump up her ego by saying that she is, I don't know. It's just, I can't tell if she's just sort of exaggeratory with her language. And in the past, when this first started happening, I thought I was wondering if Aaliyah was like, oh my God, who is this person? But I think from the very beginning, Aaliyah has been on board with the Lydia thing, but also I'm guessing that Aaliyah is just kind of accommodating. She's like, well, yeah, it is kind of a weird way of putting it, but I think I know what she means, and I trust her for now anyway. So yeah, it's just such a weird way of phrasing things.
No?
I know.
So anything that you want to know?
No, I don't want to know anything. I don't want to know anything. I want to still be surprised.
Let me tell you this. I know his friends. I've gone to a couple of...
Okay, so Aaliyah literally just told you, I don't want to know anything. And then you launch into this. Now, maybe there's an altruistic reason for this, but she could have asked and said, well, there's one thing that I would like to tell you because of this, or it's just a light thing that is it okay? But she just said, so that is in the direction of a bulldozer, someone who doesn't listen, someone who doesn't care about someone else's feelings. And if that is true and Aaliyah is okay with all of that, then that points in the direction of Aaliyah having a hard time getting in connection with her feelings. Because, Aaliyah right now could be, no, I just said, hey, she could say it in a nice way, right? Hey, I have to do that with some of my friends, and I'm sure they have to do that with me. They'll get a little energetic. I like obnoxious people. They're fun. And sometimes they get too energetic, but hey, do it in a nice way as a friend.
With his friends.
I just don't want to know that, though.
I'm pretty sure you're gonna get along. He is kind of like a workaholic.
Yeah.
So it's more stuff. Now, this is another example that we can look at to figure out what's going on with Aaliyah. Aaliyah could have reiterated it. She was clear, but given Lydia and her lack of, people say boundaries, but lack of a restraint on what she says, pros and cons, right? So the pro is she's honest, and what you see is what you get. There's no deception there. But on the bad side is you might have to remind, hey, da-da. So Aaliyah hasn't done that in the edit anyway. It's not her fault, but might indicate, because if it were me and I was in Aaliyah's shoes, at least I would like to think, and especially if it's a friend, if it's a random person, I don't know what I would do, but to a friend, I would say, I just told you, so stop, one day we'll talk about it, but I haven't even seen him yet. So can we please, I don't want to hear this stuff.
I could tell.
He is OCD. Oh, his house is dope.
Yeah.
So there's that OCD. I've been over that already. And for Aaliyah, the facial expression is pretty clear. His house is dope, and you would think there would be some like, oh, really? But Yeah. So that defeated, passive, I can't do anything, or even resentment. Like, I said something and this is pissing me off. I am very, very angry about this, but I'm not going to express it. I'm going to hide it and I'm going to suppress it. I had some hypotheses around that, but yeah, I'm not saying if anyone is wrong here, it's her. Plus, look at the body language, follow the cues, Plus, if you're Lydia, you think you would be watching your behavior, given that you just were outed for having lied by omission to your best friend's face for thousands of moments over the past week. So you think that Lydia would just be a little more careful.
I really didn't want to know too much.
It's like a 3-level house. He told you he drives a...
So it's edited, but in the edit anyway, we see her say, I really didn't want to know too much. Again, it's clear to us, but to a Lydia, you might have to be really overt and repetitive. That can be annoying, but again, if it's worth it to you, you take the good with the bad. Or is this revealing something even more pathological about Lydia and their relationship, that there's a lot of elements of bulldozing and a lot of elements of dominance and dependence. And but they're flashing to this interview one-on-one where Aaliyah is seemingly complaining about Lydia. So I wonder what that means. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.